If your non-negotiable is humility, that's where things can get wonky, because if you don't have the correct definition of what your non-negotiable is, everything gets a little thrown off.
And it wasn't until my 30s where I started to really understand what humility is and how it manifests and that kind of thing. But that's a non-negotiable for us at NLU now. Even guests we have on the show, when they're not humble, we never even air it.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1091, The Importance of Knowing Your Current, and current is in all caps, limits. Today, for episode number 1092, happy Monday. What are your real non-negotiables? So Alan and I were doing a little prep before this, and I explained to him why I decided we were going to do this episode, and he seemed a bit surprised because for me, I don't necessarily want this episode to be, what are your 5 physical non-negotiables that you do every day? I would like to frame it as, what are some of your internal non-negotiables that maybe you've been letting yourself down on? And the reason this comes to me, Alan, is because remember, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I told it recently about one of the times where I made fun of somebody at their expense. And there's a reason I remember that story, because that was me outside of alignment with my highest self and my core values. But what really happened is I broke one of my internal non-negotiables that day. I literally I shattered it, and that's why I remember it. So I thought if we went into this episode with that frame of, a lot of people are telling you, us included, do this habit, this habit, this habit. But what are you doing in terms of your own, I guess, core values on the day-to-day? How are you making sure you're in alignment with those? And what do you do? What do you feel? How do you react if you're outside of alignment with them?
The other thing, and the plot thickens, it goes even deeper. What are the implications of your non-negotiables? That's actually where I want to go on this episode.
Wow.
So for example, Kev, you going outside of alignment in that moment. So I always talk about the 89 in honors English that I got back in high school. And there's a reason I remember. I remember the exact teacher, Miss Desilets. The reason I remember that is because it was outside of alignment with my goal. And it was the one time when I didn't succeed at getting straight A's, and I'll never, ever forget it. And I think the reason why is that 89 in honors English so significant? In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't actually matter. It matters because I let myself down. I was outside of alignment in that. My goal, my core aspiration was to get straight A's in high school, and I didn't. I got 189 in honors English and then never took honors English again. So the implication is not being as good at English because I actually lowered the bars to make sure that I got straight A's. And so in this analogy, I want to unpack for you. You have this non-negotiable. What would you say you went outside of alignment with that night?
It's hard.
What's the non-negotiable that you went outside of alignment with?
Not creating energy based on somebody else's expense. That, like, not speaking down to somebody, not using their circumstances to make a joke. Whatever, respect. I think I disrespected that person. That's what I would say.
Okay, yeah, disrespect. So the core value is respect, being respectful. And so Kevin has a meaning associated with what it means to be respectful. And so everyone has their own definition of what respect is, and then everyone has their own meaning associated with what is and is not disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so you went outside of alignment with your own definition of what you believe is respectful, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the implications of that? In other words, are you never going to be disrespectful to anyone? Because what if someone is disrespectful to Taryn? Are you going to be disrespectful back?
It depends on what constitute. No, probably not.
It
depends.
Him down?
I put him, if it gets physical, I'll put him down. Yeah, of course.
Right. But see my point, right? It's like if you never want to be disrespectful, even when you're being disrespected, you might not.
But it goes
defend
deeper.
Yourself.
It goes even deeper, because if I was being disrespectful to somebody because they were disrespectful to Taryn, would I actually be being disrespectful to Taryn? Would that be construed as disrespectful towards her?
Well, that's the question.
It's deep.
And it's all contextual.
It's deep. And even that is a positive. Like, being respectful is positive, right? That's virtuous. Obviously, if you dig deep, there's always circumstances where that might get misconstrued or whatever. I was on a podcast right before this. Today has been a heavy day, but it feels good to get back into the swing of things. And my voice is holding up pretty well, all things considered.
All things considered, yeah.
Right. At the end of this call, it was very interesting. I definitely saw a lot of myself in this person. And at the end of the call, we were talking about podcasting. And I said, tell me what you're really good at. It was off that we stopped recording and we were just chatting. I said, tell me what you're really good at. And this person said the things that they believed. And I said, now tell me like you mean it. Like, tell me like you actually mean it. Like, you can say it here. Say it. Say it like you actually mean it. And we were talking about humility. And I said, humility is not you lowering yourself. It's you staying in your space and saying, yes, I am really good at this. But also thank you for the feedback. If your non-negotiable is humility, that's where things can get wonky, because if you don't have the correct definition of what your non-negotiable is, everything gets a little thrown off. So I wanted to add that too, just to deepen the layers.
Well, a lot of people don't even, they have a core value, but they haven't necessarily defined it.
Yeah.
And this is why, for those of you who are new listeners, which is most of you, because we didn't have many listeners early in the journey.
Definitely
But
not.
for those of you way, way, way back, Kevin and I in the hyper-conscious days, we used to have something called small talks. So we had, what were they, Kev? There was the 5-minute clinic.
We had 5-minute clinic, scratching the surface, small talks, and then a guest interview, I think.
And then a guest interview. So that was when we were doing 4 a week.
I believe
right?
so.
The 5-minute clinic.
5-minute clinic. Look,
what a throwback, huh?
That's a fire title. Scratching the surface too. Fire title.
It's really good.
Just wasn't
really
on brand.
Good. Small talks. I thought was kind of cool too. So, anyways, we had these small talks episodes, and we used to pick a word like humility.
I'll let you know whose idea do you think this was?
Yeah,
if you had to guess.
You have 2 guesses whose idea this was. So we would pick a word, throwback to small talks, and we would define it. So I'm going to look it up right now on Google. Humility, a modest or low view of one's own importance. Humbleness. Here's the thing. When you said, like, I was disrespectful, I was outside of alignment, that is predicated, that very statement is predicated on the fact that you actually understand not only what disrespect means, but what it means in the context of that moment. Mm. Because, and again, this is philosophical here for a second, but murder is bad. Everyone knows that. But if someone's going to attack your child and kill your child, like, murder is not bad in that context. It's necessary. And so, again, that's an extreme example. But I guess for the listeners to try to bring this into something valuable, it's really, what are your non-negotiables? Yes, but how well have you defined who you are? And this is, you've heard me say this a million times in the podcast, Kev. Zig Ziglar, shout out to Zig. He wrote a book called See You at the Top, and he talks about this idea of a wandering generality and a meaningful specific. And I think it's a spectrum, so he didn't really go this deep on it, probably for good reason. But I think everything's a spectrum. And so do we on this podcast. So drive to 5, whenever you hear drive to 5, 0 to 10, 5 is the center point, the optimal point, the proverbial confident but also humble middle point, the Goldilocks of the right amount. And so I think, and I coach a lot of different people. I was actually on the phone earlier with a client, and he's a fairly new client. He asked me, because he wants to be a mentor, a business mentor in the future. Consultant, mentor, investor. He wants to invest in companies and then consult with them so they're successful, so his investments pay off, and so he can help people in tech. Very cool guy. Big fan. And he's like, so let me get this straight. You coach people like in all different industries? I was like, yeah. And he's like, so like, aren't they all at like different levels though? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so you can't coach any of them like the same? And I was like, yeah, exactly. Right? And we had this conversation about how difficult that can be, because he's a fairly affluent investor. He knows investing, he knows finance, he and I can kind of tell. So we had him do the Next Level Financial Tracker. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially track your income, track your expenses, get a hold of your financial life, essentially.
It's fire.
And thank you, brother. So as if it's mine. Sorry.
Well, I
it's
think you
ours.
created it. Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah. But still, you're running the business one, for
Sometimes I
NLU,
wonder who's running who. What's running what? You know what I mean? When I say that?
I do know what you mean. So we go to the Next Level Financial Tracker live on the call. And it's got 5 columns, and one of them is credit card debt. We essentially made it, we took the one that you and I use, Kev, and we made it as simple as possible for people at the beginning of their journey. And he's like, dude, like, I don't have credit card debt. And I think debt is good because of leverage. And he went down the rabbit hole of finance. I'm like, no, I know. Like, I know debt is good. Like, you don't have to tell me. This is not for you, right? This was not built for you, sir. This one is. And I showed him ours. And he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, exactly, right? So what was my point of all that? You have to understand. Yeah, I know. We're in trouble. Where was I going with that?
I knew you were buying yourself time when you said you have to understand, because I do the same thing.
Talk to me. Where was I going with that?
Hey guys, my name is Laura and I was a member of group number 2, which was called Gratitude with Attitude. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience with group coaching. I was over a period of 3 months, we were guided by Kevin and Alan and encouraged to express ourselves without the fear of being judged. So they were very supportive. They are very knowledgeable. They are very, very understanding, and they just provided this safe space for us to be ourselves. And there was an amazing culture of support among all the members of the group, and you are given the opportunity to take as much as you wanted from the experience, participate as much as you wanted or as little as you wanted, and all of it was done in a very, very safe and confidential space. So you really, really have the opportunity to really grow. And to be honest, if it hadn't been for the opportunity to be in group coaching, I would not be able to have the courage to be recording this video right now. So please don't let the opportunity pass you by, because it will be the money best invested in your own personal growth. So don't wait, just do it.
I have no idea. I was just along for the ride, brother.
I need your help, man.
I have no idea where you were going with that. I have no clue where you were going with that.
All right. Full disclosure for all the listeners and or viewers.
Classic.
This has happened before.
This is part
and
of
it will
the
happen
course.
Again.
Yeah.
But I had a point, I promise you. It has escaped me.
This is one of my favorite things, Alan, that we won't edit this. It's just like, look, sometimes this happens. This is par for the course. I'm crying over it because I'm laughing so hard.
Hopefully there was something valuable in all that for everybody.
I don't
if you
think
want
so.
the Next Level Financial I don't think so. I don't think so. If you want the Next Level Financial Tracker, reach out. It's really good.
It is really good. I don't know. I don't know what the overall thought there was.
I'm going to need you to pick up this ball and
I
get it across the finish line for us.
My
I've
goal
dropped the baton.
No, you're good. My goal in this really was, a lot of people talk about, like, somebody asked me that on a podcast the other day, what are your non-negotiables? And it's like, I can tell you what my physical things are that I check off every day, but that really is maybe half the equation. Not even half the equation. Because so many of the decisions we make are predicated on what are my actual non-negotiables. You know where another reason I thought about this, Alan? I told you this. I watched this documentary on this company called, Theranos.
Something like that, yeah.
It was this young lady who made a business, and effectively, I don't know if it was her. This is the through line. They lied about everything all the way up until they became like a $9 billion net value company. And she got found out and people are going to jail and it's this whole thing. And I said, how could anybody ever get that far into business and like not think they were doing something wrong? And that's where I had this idea of, because one of their non-negotiables was success over everything else. It was
dangerous game.
make the product look better than it actually is, make the company look better than it actually is. And we've seen that a lot. I had a client too. I had this conversation with. I said, "Hey, you had 7,000 downloads like in these months, and then you had like 200. What happened?" And I was like, "You paid for ads? Did you pay for ads?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is what happened, man. Somebody told me they could get me a bunch of new listeners." And I was like, "Oh no, you got hoodwinked. You got hoodwinked, son." One of our core values is organic community.
Yeah.
Have
Organic
we paid
ads.
for ads in the past? Yes. A couple Pinterest ads, a couple Facebook ads, whatever. But
Quite huge waste of money.
yeah, but to this point, it was like I said, you got to understand, you're not paying for real things. These are fake.
Right. At least those were real listeners.
They were ads, not listens. But, and again, my thing is, well, we would never do that. Why? Because our non-negotiable is doing it within what we believe is integrous.
I want to come clean. I told you this one day in the studio. This is way back. A lot of throwbacks today. You remember? I was like, Kev, I got to come clean, man.
Yeah,
I
no,
got hoodwinked too.
Yeah.
I got hoodwinked too. I paid for Instagram views and likes and stuff. I thought they were real.
Yeah.
And I found out later they're not real because it was kind of like when you pay, you get a bunch of likes and views, but when you stop paying, they go away. And so I was like, so none of these are real then.
Mm.
And I came clean to Kev. I was like, Kev, I've been essentially paying for like several months for
Yeah, I remember you
Instagram
said
stuff, and I'm sorry, and I don't know why it's bothering me or whatever, because I think it's fake. And I was a bit embarrassed. I was embarrassed. The truth is, I was embarrassed because I got hoodwinked.
Mm.
And I think after I found out that was happening and that it wasn't real, I kept going for a couple months because it was like, well, now what? Everybody thinks that I'm, I was just embarrassed about the whole thing. But if integrity was not our number one core value, our number one non-negotiable, we would probably have kept doing that.
Well, I didn't know. I wasn't privy to the information until you told me. So
No.
I didn't have
Once you
anything to
found
do
out,
with
you
it.
were very kind about it. I really appreciate it. You were like,
What am I going to do?
It's
So
all good.
Yeah, do your thing, man. Whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily affect me directly.
But the non-negotiables that you have set for yourself are everything.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I had these big goals and these big dreams, but I wasn't as clear on who I want to be. I was very clear on the end goal, but the path to get there was very blurry. And who I was as a person was not as much a focus in terms of non-negotiables. Yeah. And so after 26, I got very, very clear on like what is a non-negotiable for me. And Kevin and I redid our core values. We did an episode on it recently. We'll touch on them briefly, but I recite them every single day in my head. So number one is legacy, which is a deep belief in a long-term positive impact. Number two is mastery. Number three is virtue. Number four is potential, human potential. And then number five is humility. And the humility one is fairly new for me. I don't think being humble is necessarily new for me, but it being a focal point in terms of a non-negotiable, that is new for me. Mm. And I told Kevin this recently. I said on the NLU team, at the beginning, we had core values of the business. And we would always, bring people onto the team from the community because they're already aligned. They already naturally and organically align with our core values. They value what we value. That's why they listen. And so we would try to bring on team members from outside the community, and it ended up not being as good. And so we kind of made a decision, just like we made the decision not to do paid ads anymore. Mm. We made a decision to only bring people from the community onto the team because it just naturally aligns. But in the beginning, we didn't really know fully what our core values were. And then we started working with team members, and the ones that were not consistent and reliable, we realized we have a big, big hard time with people like that. Yeah. And recently in the last year, 2022, Kevin and I have realized people that don't have a lot of humility, we have a really hard time working with. I think you always have. I think that's fairly new for me. I don't think I understood humility like at all in my, late 20s. Mm. And it wasn't until my 30s where I started to really understand what humility is and how it manifests and that kind of thing. But that's a non-negotiable for us at NLU now. Even guests we have on the show, when they're not humble, we never even air it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that we've had several interviews with very, very, very successful people who have been on all the big shows that we will not air because we don't have the shows anymore. We deleted them. But yeah, it wasn't within It was outside of alignment. That's the best way to put it. It was outside of alignment. This is how I think of it, and then we do have to go because we have our team call. I like to think of it as there's non-negotiables that you check off every day. I went to the gym, I meditated, blah, blah. I can't say the gym's a non-negotiable for me because I haven't gone in 3 days because I've been jeffing. But those are the boxes you check off. I think the internal non-negotiables are the boxes you operate from. Of like, I won't go outside of this box.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a different perspective in terms
Analogy
of
time.
understanding. You know what I mean?
Analogy time. Ready?
You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it right now.
Real quick.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. The internal way you operate is like the operating system of the computer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Audacity or StreamYard or Paint is the program that you check off. That's like your daily habits, right? And the operating system is the core of the computer. Yeah. So awesome.
You would go there, right? That's where you would go naturally.
Well, computer engineer.
Computers. Yeah. We got a shout out to Alto, whatever, one of those two names.
Yeah, the Alto, the very
one
first,
of these recent ones.
Very first computer with a mouse ever in 1980s. You know,
I dig it.
Pretty cool.
I very much enjoyed this week's episodes. Well, I guess it's, again, we record these in advance, but we recorded 4 today, I think. 5 today. I very much enjoyed the flow of these. I think it was, most of the episodes we did were based on stories or examples or lessons that we're dealing with, that we're going through. And I think those are usually the most impactful ones because we can connect it to what maybe you've gone through, you're going through, or you will go through in the future. That's always the goal.
So what are your non-negotiables? That's the question to ask yourself.
Yes.
Not just internally, in terms of daily habits, but internally as well. In terms of character traits, core values, core aspirations, daily habits. I'm 190 days into 30 minutes of exercise per day. It's become a non-negotiable. So non-negotiables have many layers. Strong work, Kev.
Everything's got layers. Oh, hyper-conscious. That was this podcast once. We're gonna bring it back. Next level nation. My voice is getting buttery at this point. As you can see, and I've mentioned in every single episode this week, our 8th round of group coaching is starting. A lot of us want to get to the next level in our lives, and we think going out and learning a bunch of things will help, and it definitely will. But there's a lot of things that you should focus on unlearning and raising your awareness to. Part of group coaching, yes, we talk about success fundamentals and self-improvement principles, but a lot of what we're doing is we're helping you look in the mirror to understand who you are at a deeper level, and that really is where change occurs. So if you are interested in that, please join our 8th round. Everything you need to know is in the show notes, and it starts on October 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
At Next Level University, we're a whole university. We're not just one podcast, we're a whole university. So there's something called Podcast Growth University. It's Kevin's podcast, and it is a specific podcast about podcasting by a podcaster for podcasters. How cool is that?
Pretty wild.
Pretty cool. So this is Next Level You, holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, and love. That podcast is Podcast Growth You, which is how to help you grow and scale your podcast and your voice and your impact. So go check that out. The link will be in the show notes. And if you're a podcaster who already has a show or aspiring to be, that is the place to be.
Tell them. Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 1093. We're creeping up there. Last week's live podcast, how to figure out what's really making a difference. This was a whole thing. I started it early. My internet was jeffing. Alan's internet froze. It's a valuable episode, but there definitely were some technical difficulties. I'll just give you a heads up.
My computer randomly shut off.
Yeah, it was interesting.
A lot of those this week.
It was interesting, but it was a valuable episode. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.